Chapter 8. Geor'Jes. P-Funk wakes up from a nap the next morning, still smelling Mrs. Davis's perfume. He decides that he's going to send her a text and take her up on an offer for lunch. P-Funk reaches, grabs his phone, and before he starts the text, he can't help but think about how her body felt up against his dick. He wants to know how the inside of her is going to feel. He sends Mrs. Davis a good morning text and lets her know that he enjoyed their conversation last night. Mrs. Davis immediately responds with a good morning, Paul Ford. I enjoyed our conversation as well. Have you thought about my offer for lunch? Paul excitedly reads Mrs. Davis's messages and decides that he is not going to waste any time and cut straight to the chase. Good googity moogity, he thinks. She must really like me. I'm going to have to lay it on smooth so she doesn't think I'm playing with her. Paul responds back to Mrs. Davis. Yes, I would love to have lunch with you today. I know there's a lot of hot spots around the city, especially places that doctors and lawyers like yourself like to frequent. How about you take me to one of these hot spots, and maybe after lunch, I can find your hot spot. Mrs. Davis takes notice of the flirtation in his comments and decides to slide in as well. You know, if you stay out of trouble, you'll be able to find the hot spots. They both start giggling. Looking forward to meeting at Geor'Jes, Mrs. Davis figures that Paul won't know anything about Geor'Jes unless he's accustomed to fine dining and the upper echelons of sophistication. She's caught off guard when he says, Oh, great choice. I was there a couple days ago. She smiles again, enchanted with the savoir-vivre of Paul Ford. Before P-Funk heads over to Geor'Jes, which really isn't that far from him, he carefully inspects the job that the kid did on his car. A man's automobile choice tells a lot about him. He knows that he's dressed to impress, and he can't have any streaks on the ride. When he pulls up to La Palco and Manhattan Boulevard, the valet rushes out to greet him. It seems like everyone seated by the window stops eating to observe him, and the 760i BMW, triple black, with the 22-inch Lexicon silver rims, that has the Beamer looking like a flying object. Killer has really set him up sweet, and the car is one of the perks. He tries not to stare back at all the women seated by the window, but the temptation is too great. Seeing the pretty smiles of these ladies reaffirms what he's been told. The ratio for women to men is 10-1. He can't imagine what any brother would be thinking to not be with one or a couple of these beauties in front of him. Out of habit, Mrs. Davis has arrived 30 minutes early. She sits towards the rear of the restaurant so she can view her surroundings as well as the entrance. It has been years since she's cheated on her husband, and she wants to be discreet. Her Valextra attaché case sits next to her, and several papers are scattered across the table. She's trying to give the appearance that this is a business lunch. The last few minutes she has been pretending to read the Wall Street Journal, but this is only a front. She waits to observe the grand entrance of her soon-to-be stud. She watches intently as he makes his way through the flock of females, all of whom are damn near willing to fuck him right on the spot. P-Funk stands in the restaurant and scans the room to locate Mrs. Davis. He spots her sitting in the rear and moves in that direction. On his way to their table, two chicks have the audacity to grab his coat while saying, After lunch with moms, let's go to our place and fuck till we pass out. He politely pulls his coat away and says, Excuse me, and continues on his mission. The closer he gets to the table, he notices the blue suit she has on. He notices she's perfectly accentuated with blue heels and blue frames that hang just beneath her gorgeous blue-green eyes. Good googity moogity, P-Funk thinks. Mrs. Davis stands up and extends her hand. Good afternoon, Paul. I see you finally made it. P-Funk can tell by her eyes that she is being sarcastic. He kisses her hand while saying, Isabel Morant couldn't have made a better suit, especially the way it fits you. Good afternoon, my queen. In his mind, he knew he had her, and he'll get the draw soon. Meanwhile, Miss Davis is totally impressed that Paul knew his Fabrica, and this makes her wonder how attentive he must be. They both order steak and lobster, the surf and turf special. After a few minutes of brief conversation and 2 martinis, they are both in good spirits. When she suggests they go back to her office, he's ecstatic. He thought about pushing the issue earlier, but is glad he didn't. He definitely doesn't want to appear to be in a rush. Her firm is located on St. Charles Avenue with the entrance on St. Charles. Knowing the nosy employees in the building will be in her business, she tells Paul to come in through the back entrance on Jackson. When he walks into her office, Mrs. Davis is sitting on the corner of her desk. Her heels are dangling like a little girl's. After he sits down, she asks him to come toward her. She's given these instructions with her fingers. As he gets closer, he noticed that her stockings are only thigh-high. As she parts her legs, he almost drools when he sees the silk tea bags. They both stare at each other, reading each other's mind. There is no need to speak. They both understand the nonverbals. When P-Funk gets closer, they both smell the martinis from earlier. She reaches under his shirt and starts rubbing on his chest. P-Funk is considering several options, then decides to just go with the flow. He gently places his hands under her skirt, and when he strokes her inner thighs and grabs her butt cheeks, she begins to moan. Mrs. Davis hadn't planned to go this far. Not yet, anyway. She had visions of a 5-star hotel or a weekend escapade, not simply making love in her office, on her desk. She finds herself sticking her tongue in his ear, and within seconds they're kissing like 2 French lovers under a pair of sun. P-Funk has been home no less than 5 months, and already he's doing things he never dreamed of. He gets control of himself and turns her around, facing the window towards St. Charles Avenue. He hears her say something about leaving and going to a hotel, but he has other thoughts on his mind. He kisses her on the back of her neck and then reaches around and places his fingers on her clitoris. She becomes limp. He knew she was hot, but the warmth and dampness he feels between her legs feels like a sauna. He knows now that he can't release this beauty until he fulfills his duty. Mrs. Davis is feeling sensations that she has not felt in years. She's trying to stay in control. But damn, why does he have to touch me there? This is her last thought before she reaches back behind her, trying to unzip his pants. He continues playing with her clit with one hand and helps get his dick out with the other. She knows she shouldn't be doing this at the office, but her engine is on fire. Before long, she finds herself with her knees on the sofa. Mrs. Davis looks out onto St. Charles Avenue, hoping this young stud fucks her into tomorrow. She reaches for the top of the sofa, knowing that he's about to deliver exactly what she needs. P-Funk starts long dicking her, pulling his dick out almost to the tip before slowly pushing it back in. This is driving her crazy, and she finally tells him to fuck her. He starts banging into the pussy like he's trying to knock a hole in it. She starts moaning louder and louder. Before P-Funk notices it, he's moaning as well. She looks over her shoulder and sees the determination on his face. Between breaths, she asks, "Where did you learn to fuck like this?" P-Funk feels the cum rising and can't hold it anymore. He wipes the sweat from his forehead, and as he trembles, he says, "The streets raised me." When he busts his nut in her, all he hears is her saying, "Yes and fucking D." The voice catches them both off guard, and when they turn around, Linda says, "I know y'all ain't doing what I think y'all are." P-Funk releases the last of his nut in Mrs. Davis and is in shock when he sees Linda's face. Mrs. Davis says, "Don't you know how to knock?" He knows it's time to jet and simply gives her his bro man look. He still loves the Martin show, and bro man is his favorite character. He doesn't want to just walk out, so he listens as Mrs. Davis coaches Linda on keeping her mouth shut. She reminds her about the favor that Linda owes her. Years ago, Mrs. Davis caught Linda with one of her grandfather's partner's dick in her mouth. Linda plays dumb like she doesn't remember. But after Mrs. Davis lays out all the details about old man Peter Smith, Linda agrees to a truce. Although Linda was only 15 when the incident occurred, she remembers it like it was yesterday. She still hates Mrs. Davis for walking in. Mrs. Davis was just a secretary at that time, working for Linda's grandfather. As P-Funk heads out, they all share a laugh about both instances. P-Funk decides to take the scenic route home. He wants to reminisce on the day's events. Mrs. Davis truly made an impression on him, but his mind keeps traveling to Remy. As he gets closer to his crib, he notices about 6 youngsters hanging out. It seems to him that they're out here hustling. As he notices their constant presence, when he drives by, the BMW brings all action to a halt. All eyes are watching him, admiring him, wanting to be like him. He pulls in front of his house. He smiles, knowing he's a ghetto superstar. When P-Funk grabs his CD from the player, he sees some females across the street staring at him. He gets to his door and looks back, just like he assumed. The one with the purple hair has her legs wide open, licking her lips, letting him know he can come get it any time. While enjoying that thought, the phone starts to ring before he can get in the door. He runs in and grabs the phone. "Run your mouth," he says when answering it. Killer is accustomed to this and says, "I would, my brother, if my mouth had legs. What's up, fool?" They exchange their brotherly shout-outs, and Killer tells P-Funk about the upcoming Essence concert. "Man, I got 4 tickets, and you need to get a date." Still full of jokes, Killer continues, "Or do I have to get an escort service for you?" After they laugh for a few more minutes, P-Funk assures him that in the area of women, he's covered. Before hanging up, he says, "We're leaving around 8 p.m., and we'll be in the Bentley." They both say, "One love," signifying their conversation is now over. P-Funk doesn't sit the phone down. He simply makes another call. He smiles to himself, knowing that Killer is going to be surprised when he sees who his date is. P-Funk and Mrs. Davis are hooking up daily for lunch, and more than lunch is being served. Mr. Davis peeps the joyful mood his wife has been in lately and jokingly says, "You must have found you a young stud." "No, dear." "Why would you say that?" she asks. He explains how she seems so exuberant and that he likes it when she's so jolly. "Oh, I wasn't aware that you still paid attention to me," she responded while continuing to do her sit-ups. Mr. Davis wants to make love on this particular night. He approaches her while saying, "I always pay attention to you, love. You are my wife." He embraces her from behind once she stands up from her exercise and attempts to kiss her in the neck. She quickly turns and says, "Not tonight, honey." Red light, pointing towards her pelvis. In frustration, he mumbles, "Damn red light." Mrs. Davis tells him how she has been bleeding for 2 days. She can hear the air escape his mouth, signifying his reluctance to accept this. On her way to the bathroom, she thinks to herself, if he paid attention so well, he'd know that her period comes on at the beginning of the month, not today, the 29th. The Essence concert is scheduled for Saturday. That Friday afternoon, P-Funk and Killer head to Rubenstein Brothers. It wouldn't be correct if they didn't have new suits. Also, P-Funk has ordered some ostrich Montagne shoes. He noticed them while looking through a GQ magazine. As they sit in the shoe department, Sergio runs in. "I've cut your jacket and pants to perfection. I know y'all will be the shit at the concert." Remy just smiles as she admires the suits and new shoes. It seems like an actual adventure when they go shopping. The valet holds an umbrella over P-Funk and Killer, shielding them from the sun. He's really doing a Belvedere for his tip. The evening of the concert finally arrives. P-Funk is dressed to the T. All the kids stop doing whatever they were doing as the Bentley pulls up to his crib. Myra approaches his door, dressed in her usual white chauffeur's gear, and politely rings the doorbell. All the youngsters are sweating her as she walks back to the Bentley and stands by the door. When P-Funk finally comes out of the house, you would have thought he was a resurrected Martin Luther King Jr. All eyes were on him. Even the birds stopped chirping, and that's just the way he liked it. Recognition. He can hear one of the youngsters say, P-Funk is cleaner than the Board of Health. He hands Myra a piece of paper containing an address with directions. Myra reads the address, 1285, Washingtonia, smiles at P-Funk, and closes the door behind him. After driving for roughly 15 minutes, Killer becomes anxious. Man, where does this date of yours live? West Wego? They continue to pass jokes back and forth. Before they realize it, they're at their destination. The house is painted a pretty green. As they pull up to the black wrought iron gates, they are opened by a security guard. Linda is enthralled by the landscaping. She looks at the azaleas, the sago palms, the Washingtonia palms, the bonsai trees, the perfect alignment of the oak trees leading up the driveway. She knows that such landscaping easily costs over $100K. From the look of the entire setup, she knows that whoever lives here has crazy cash. In the driveway, parked close to the door, is a green 4.6 Range Rover and a white Lexus LS 400. Myra pulls up and politely blows the horn. She then exits the vehicle to prepare for their new guest. When the doors at the top of the steps swing open, all eyes are on Remy. She has on a dress the same color as P-Funk's suit, tailored by Versace. P-Funk looks over at Killer, noticing that Killer's lip is hanging so far down. It looks as if he wants to spit shine his Montagani shoes. P-Funk introduces Remy to Linda, and they all shake hands while settling back in the Bentley. Killer remains in shock. He is not only surprised to see Remy and P-Funk together, he feels kind of outdone. P-Funk fixes everyone a drink, then proceeds to get a special bottle he asks Myra to put there. Remy notices that he's opening a brand new bottle of something and asks, "Why aren't you drinking Cavassier with us?" He smiles and salutes them. "Let's have a toast to my lovely date. The only woman I know that deserves to be named after one of the most expensive brandies in the world, to my Remy." Everyone smiles while P-Funk drinks from the bottle of Remy Martin. The moment is truly to be remembered. Killer glances at P-Funk, giving him a look that lets him know they need to get together later. Killer wants to know how he landed Remy. P-Funk feels a little uncomfortable after realizing that Killer feels slighted because he has the prettiest chick and one that has been unattainable to him. After their grand entrance, they're escorted to their seats in the front row. As Tina Maria starts singing Young Love, the Superdome is packed to capacity. Ballers come in from all around the state. Linda suggests they take some flicks during intermission. It's good that they decide to arrive a little earlier, as there isn't too many people in line. As they get closer to the booth, P-Funk excuses himself to freshen up. He wants to make sure he's perfect for the pictures. Across the room, Tyra, Ashanti, Michelle, and Cedra are getting some drinks at the bar. Tyra is the first to spot P-Funk. "Girl, ain't that Paul?" All the girls look in his direction. Ashanti is thinking she's made a horrible mistake while observing how handsome P-Funk looks in his suit. She wants to kick her own ass. P-Funk walks into the restroom and inspects himself in the mirror. After he makes sure that every hair is in place, he steps back and says, "I look so good, I could kiss myself." He tips the guy handing out lotion and cologne $5 before he glides out the door. He hustles back to the photo line and sees his people are closer to the front. He looks at some females as he hurries past them, thinking, the girl with the braids looks familiar. He walks up to Remy, places his arm around her, and gives her a kiss on the cheek. Ashanti had no idea that P-Funk could stir up her dormant but intense feelings for him just by seeing him. She's trying not to smile too much in hopes that he'll notice her. He walks past. She's disappointed when he doesn't even acknowledge her. She thinks to herself, oh well, maybe he didn't see me. That idea goes out the window when Michelle says, girl, I know he saw you. Shit, at least he could have said hello. Cedra, the most antagonistic of the crew, simply throws her weave back while saying, well, look at it this way. It ain't like you stuck by him when he was down. This pisses Michelle off, and she angrily replies, bitch, you act like you on his side. Ashanti just stands there in silence. She's thinking to herself, instead of being with her used-to-be man, she's hanging out with these tricks. What a fucked up life. Why shouldn't I be the one Paul has his arms around? P-Funk, Remy, Linda, and Killa finish taking several flicks as they prepare to return to their seats. Michelle, Tyra, and Cedra step over to P-Funk. What's up, stranger? When did you get out, they ask. Give or take a month, maybe less. I've been having so much fun, I actually lost track of time, P-Funk says. Damn, you ain't look us up, says Cedra. Just trying to get reacquainted with the set, P-Funk replied. Is that so? States Tyra. We do what we do, right? P-Funk says. Who you with? Asks Michelle. That's my favorite drink in the flesh. Her name is Remy. Remy says hi, then they proceed to their seats. Killa sees Ashanti in the corner, playing the cut, and motions P-Funk to wave. He waves, she waves back, but her heart is on the floor. Not only is his day gorgeous, shit, she's a dub. As they walk off, P-Funk winks at the girls. Cedra is now 5'3" and 122 pounds, creamy black skin with long jet black hair, all of which, of course, is not hers. She has a body like a cherry, sweet and tight. Michelle and Tyra still look the same. They both have short hair. Tyra's curly and Michelle's is just short, project short. Michelle is 5'8", and Tyra is slightly shorter with a petite body. Now Michelle has that ghetto booty that only lima beans, candy yams, cornbread, collard greens with fat back, fried chicken, all of those things can produce. Ashanti has grown to be the splitting image of the singer Ashanti. They could pass for twins. After the concert, they decide to go to the after party at the Doubletree on Canal Street. While they stand on the curb waiting on Myra to pull up, P-Funk notices Ashanti and her crew sweating a Bentley. He takes this opportunity to cap. After Myra opens the door, P-Funk yells, "Damn!" This draws the crowd's attention. As he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a wad of money, he peels off $100 bill, wipes his shoes with it, balls it up, and tosses it to the ground. Of course, he makes sure that everyone is looking. Linda marvels at his cap, smiles, and merely shakes her head, thinking, you can take the man out of the ghetto, but not the ghetto out of the man. P-Funk and Killa give each other some dab and recline in luxurious comfort of the Bentley. When they pull off, they notice Cedra in the rearview mirror. She's reaching down to pick up the $100 bill. Surprised, she says, "It's a big face!" Then runs and shows it to her girls. Meanwhile, Ashanti's sick. Her man has just pulled off with a beautiful chick, and all she remembers is the front of the license plate. Paid in full. Can't believe the shit I pulled.